Class 11th, Chapter 2, Atomic Structure, Lecture 8. In previous two lectures, we discussed Bohr's postulates and we learned that how he could derive equations to explain the emission and absorption spectrum of hydrogen atom. Let us recapitulate those. He could derive the equation for calculation of nth radius of hydrogen atom or hydrogen like species, means single electron atoms. Rn, he calculated that 4 pi epsilon 0 n square h square upon 4 pi square z e square m. This was the equation he derived. Here we can rewrite that Rn is equal to 4 pi epsilon 0 h square upon 4 pi square e square m, and here what is left, n square upon z. That's how this Rn can be calculated. Here you can see that all this is constant for hydrogen atom, and here m is what? That is the mass of the electron. This is charge on an electron. This is Planck's constant. This is Rn. If we take the value 1 and Z also 1, means what? That is the first orbit. N1 means first orbit, Z1 means hydrogen. Hydrogen's first orbit, if we take this as 1, this also 1, by putting the values of these, we get the first orbit of the hydrogen, and that is symbolized as A0 or Bohr's radius. Therefore, this is equal to A0, and A0 is, by calculating this, that comes out to be 52.9 picometer. And here by putting this value comes out to be this much. That's why we can say that to calculate any Rn in any hydrogen like species, the equation is this: A0 n square upon z. That can give the value, means the radius of any orbit of hydrogen like species. Therefore you have to memorize this: Rn A0 n square upon z. This equation you have to memorize. Rest of those derivations are not in your syllabus. Those I have explained just to understand this, that from where this A0 has been derived. Right? Is that clear? Therefore, you have to remember this. Now I come to next equation that you have to remember. Similarly, in previous lecture, I derived the equation for energy in the nth orbit, and energy that was, the total was minus, and I also explained that from where this RH came, and in the bracket that comes out to be z square upon n square. And similarly, delta E means change in energy when electron goes from one orbit to another orbit. Then this is given by RH, Rydberg's constant, into 1 upon n initial minus 1 upon n final. This is the equation we get for hydrogen atom. So these equations you have to memorize. These equations show what? That this is hydrogen atom, this is R1. According to the equation, if it goes to the R2, then R2 should be A0 n square. Means this is R1, this is A0. When R1, it is A0. When it is R2, it is 4 times A0. Similarly, for the third, it is 9 times A0. Similarly, the energy in second, energy is initial energy, that is Rydberg's constant, that is divided by square of the n. Means if it is 4A0, then energy gets 1 upon 4th. Radius gets square of the nth orbit, and energy gets 1 upon square of that orbit. Means if energy gets 1/4, radius gets 4 times. Here the energy gets 1 upon 9th and radius gets 9 times. Now you can solve equations related to all these transitions. Now let us discuss the limitations of Bohr's model. Limitations. Bohr's calculation could only explain the spectrum of hydrogen atom only, or the single electron species. And if we take helium atom, then there are 2 electrons. And the spectral lines of this helium atom could not be explained by Bohr's mathematical formulations or on the basis of Bohr's postulates. Those failed. Means Bohr could only explain the single electron atoms emissions or absorptions. It means there was something wrong in that. Means as one more electron is added, then that theory fails. Another point is that even the hydrogen spectral lines, those were not a single frequency. on higher resolution, those could also be split. Bohr's theory could not explain the splitting of the apparently looking single frequency into two other frequencies. Means it won't emit a sharp frequency. Bohr's model could not explain the emission and absorption spectrum of atoms other than hydrogen. It could not explain Stark and Zeeman effect. What is Stark and Zeeman effect? You have already studied that when these atoms are placed in magnetic or electric field, then the spectral lines get split, and the frequencies of those could not be explained on the basis of Bohr's model. Bohr's model also could not explain the splitting of hydrogen spectral lines, means the hydrogen atom also does not emit a single frequency. This led to the development of another theory in which two important postulates contributed the most. Number one was de Broglie argued that the electromagnetic waves, they have dual nature, means they have wave nature as well as particle nature. Then matter must also be associated, or the particle must also be associated with waves as well as particle nature, means matter must also have dual nature. And he formulated a mathematical relation between the wavelength lambda and the momentum of the particle, of a moving particle, which is equal to the Planck's constant divided by the momentum, Planck's constant h divided by the momentum of the particle. Suppose this is a particle. If its momentum is 0, it would have no lambda, means no wave would be associated with that. But as it starts moving, it has momentum, therefore there would be a wave associated with this, and that wavelength lambda would be equal to Planck's constant divided by the momentum. Means more the momentum, smaller lambda, less the momentum, larger is the lambda. So if you put the values of that, if this particle is very heavy, that means the momentum is very high, then lambda is also very small. Therefore, for microparticles, this lambda almost approaches to 0. That's why this lambda cannot be seen for microparticles. But for microparticles, this matters a lot. Therefore, you have to remember this, that lambda, de Broglie lambda, is equal to Planck's constant divided by the momentum of the particle. Second postulate, another important one that also contributed in development of the quantum mechanics, was uncertainty principle. Uncertainty principle. This principle was given by Heisenberg. That is why it is called Heisenberg uncertainty principle. According to this principle, suppose there is a particle here. When it moves along the x-axis, then we cannot exactly calculate its position x. We cannot calculate. We can calculate with uncertainty, means there would be uncertainty, and how much uncertainty would be there means delta x. Uncertainty means delta x in its position multiplied by the uncertainty in its momentum delta p is equal to or greater than, is greater than or equal to Planck's constant divided by 4 pi. Here lambda was Planck's constant divided by momentum. Here Planck's constant divided by 4 pi. Delta x into delta p is equal to or greater than h upon 4 pi. Means as we try to minimize the uncertainty in measurement of the position of a particle, then there would be more uncertainty in measurement of momentum of that particle or the velocity of that particle. And if we try to make more precise measurements of the momentum or the velocity, we cannot find the exact position of the particle. Means delta x varies. How? Suppose we try to be very precise about the velocity, then what happens? We lose the information whether this particle is lying here, here or here. Means this range, within that it may lie, that goes on expanding as we try to narrow down the uncertainty here in the velocity. Suppose this represents velocity. If we try to be more precise here to find the velocity, then it gets, this uncertainty range gets wider, and same is true when we try to make it more precise, then it gets wider. Means it is not possible to find position and momentum of any particle exactly at the same time. That is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. These two important concepts, that whenever a particle moves, it gets associated with a wave, and another point is that when there is a momentum, the position of the particle cannot be exactly specified. Instead, we can talk about the presence of particle within a certain range, and we can never come to know about the exact location. And if we know the exact location, then we lose the information of the correct momentum of that particle. These two important concepts contribute towards the development of the quantum physics. And what does it mean? The meaning of these two is such that it is difficult for a person to conceptualize it or to have an idea that what does it mean. If we combine these two, then we get a picture of the electron revolving around nucleus. Here now we cannot talk about the classical motion of the particle in a well-defined path. We cannot tell because its speed is very high, approx 1 upon 137 c. If this is moving with such a high velocity in the classical sense, then we cannot find its exact position, whether it is here, it is here, 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 here. We can simply talk about a certain region that it can be present somewhere around the nucleus. Here it can be present somewhere around. Means electron does not move in the classical sense. Then how does it move? It is because associated with a wave, and it should move with such a velocity so that when it completes one circle, the waves formed due to this should be in same phase on completing the circle. We discuss the effect of these concepts on our concepts of wave, and let us see how now the atomic structure can be described on the basis of first these two concepts. De Broglie, wave is associated with the electron, means now electron is not just a particle. Here it moves. It will move in such a orbit so that the wave does not destroy itself, means it should not have such a R where this wavelength is not compatible, means it should not destroy itself with destructive interference, means it can be either lambda by 2. It should be either lambda by 2 or it should be lambda. If it's lambda by 2, this would be the wave produced. If it is lambda, then one complete wave shall be produced, and so on. The wave particle duality puts so many conceptual challenges. Here is a wave, here is a particle. Particle is well localized. How this particle can become a wave? For example, an electron that is a point object, and if it's a point, then it cannot be a wave because wave spreads out in the space. It has certain wavelength lambda, means that can be measured. Similarly, its magnitude can also be measured, but a point object cannot be measured. This is first difficulty. Another is what? Here suppose a wave is emitted from this point in this direction, then what happens? Keeps on spreading out in space, and here suppose it reaches at this point. Here are different points on this wavefront. Suppose this is photon. When this photon reaches here, and there are different receivers, where this photon shall be received here, here, or here, or here, or where. where this photon shall be received, because this is a particle. A particle cannot be of this much size, and if it's of this much size, it cannot be of this size. Another important point is what? That whether the electron revolves around in the classical sense. If not, then how it can have kinetic energy? And if it is not at a specified distance from here, how its potential energy can be calculated? Such other difficult concepts we shall discuss in the next lecture. Lecture number 9. Till then,